This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show. The doctor is in the house. Do 2 affirmations and call me in the morning. Change your life one new thought at a time. Make your dreams come true. Attract that lasting, loving relationship. Successful career. Radiant health. And abundant wealth. Tune in to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show and learn positive ways to get what you want on www.contacttalkradio.com.
And welcome to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show, where dreams really can and do come true. And I have many guests on this show. I've been doing it for, 15 plus years. And but one guest I've been really looking forward to interviewing happens to be a gentleman named Brent Hunter. Now, let's talk a little bit. I'll just say a little bit about Brent Hunter. He's a producer and information security executive who specializes in creating strengths based on high performance and teams in multiple industries. Wow, that's quite a big job. Brent has been responsible for budgets up to $38 million and for organizations of up to 200 team members. Hunter has worked at or consolidated with companies including, but not limited to, Warner Media, the Walt Disney Company, Hulu, I guess it's called, General Electric, Wells Fargo Bank, Blue Shield of California, and Robert Half International. Brent has earned multiple advanced degrees, is a graduate of General Electric's Fast Track Information Systems Management Program and holds, 12 active professional certifications. Brent is also a social media pioneer. He's a former physiotherapist and the author of 5 books regarding the subjects of knowledge, management, psychology, and universal wisdom. And today we are going to discuss his highly acclaimed book, which is simply called The Rainbow Bridge to Inner Peace and to World Peace. That is wonderful. So welcome to the show there. How are you doing today, Brent?
Thank you, Anne Marie. I'm doing really good today.
Good.
Very good.
And you've got so many books out, and where do you get time to write all these books and work full time and everything? Have a family?
Well, that's it's something that I do at night and on the weekends, pretty much. My writing and my passion projects.
Wow, you see, you've got a lot on the ball, and the Rainbow Bridge. I think it illuminates common ground in the world's major wisdom traditions, doesn't it? And why is that so important?
It does. So the Rainbow Bridge, as you said, illuminates the common ground in the world's major wisdom traditions. And I call these principles universal principles because they apply to everyone, no matter what religion or race or culture or gender or age or what part of the world you're in. They're basically these principles that apply to everyone. And the reason why I think this is so incredibly important in the times that we're living in is, it's real easy to find differences between us. We can find so many different differences, but if we focus on what unites us, I think that is a much more useful endeavor to bring us together in this time of great change and great uncertainty and great chaos, is that in order to come together and to successfully resolve the problems that we have to focus on our common ground. And that's what these universal principles are, is the common ground that serve as this, common ground that brings us all together.
Now, what brought you to write the book? How did you decide all the things you do and the things I just read out? My goodness, how did you ever get time to write a book?
Well, that's a great question, and the Rainbow Bridge book actually came out of a business. It was really the result of the business that I ran in 1994 until roughly 2000, and that's a whole other story about that. That was the first intentionally global online community in the world, and was a precursor to sites like Facebook and LinkedIn that we have today. And it was a very, very challenging operation. We kind of got caught up in the dot-com craze. We didn't get the kind of funding that we needed to build a viable business, so unfortunately we had to shut down the operation after several years in 2000. And at the time that we shut down, we had about 700,000 members around the world.
Wow.
From about 200 countries. And, today, according to today's numbers, 700,000 people doesn't sound like a lot of people, but back then it was a very significant number of people coming together in this online community. And there were many, many sleepless nights. It was just an incredibly difficult, but also very rewarding experience, but many, many, many sleepless nights. And during the course of those sleepless nights, I'd spent a lot of time meditating and taking notes and kind of drawing upon the inspiration that I had available to me, which is basically all of the major world wisdom traditions and the main religions of the world. And I'll speak in just a minute here about my background. But I was taking notes to myself to help bring me through that period of rough water. And after several years of taking these notes, one day in roughly around 2000, I was meditating, I had my notebooks out, and I was looking at all these notes, and suddenly I just had this epiphany that what I had been writing down all these years were these universal principles that were found within all of the world's major wisdom traditions, and that just like they helped me navigate through those rough waters, these universal principles would help other people navigate any kind of challenges in their lives as well, both individually as individual people, but also we could use these universal principles to help create a better world.
And that's why it's so important, isn't it, to get it out in print so people can read about it too.
Thank you. Exactly. Yes. So that's why in 2000 I put out the original collector's edition of the Rainbow Bridge, and it was deliberately a small book. My intention there was to write and to publish the common ground in the world's major wisdom traditions in using as few words as possible and as little paper as possible. So it was one of these small,
it was like a summary, right?
Well, it was like a book that you would put in your pocket, and it was deliberately designed to be just, the smallest number of words to describe what this common ground actually is. And then that was the first edition, and then I came out with 3 additional editions after that, so that the latest one is the 4th edition.
Wow. And, just off a different subject for a minute, what you worked with the Walt Disney Company. What did you do there? What position did you hold there?
So what I typically do, what I've done actually after the park experience, the park online community that I was just talking about, I've been working primarily as primarily in the field of project and program management and information security. So that particular role that I played when I was at the Walt Disney Company, I was the program manager of information security for the Disney ABC television group. And that's what I did there when I was at Disney.
Oh, that's interesting. Did you meet Mickey Mouse? Or Minnie Mouse?
No, but I saw lots of pictures.
I bet you did. That's kind of exciting, isn't it? I just wanted to sidebar there because it's really exciting. So now, what are the universal principles? I'm sure that people listening are thinking, what are they? Can you go through what they are, maybe step by step?
Sure. So there are 60 universal principles, and I don't think it would be helpful to go through all of them, but I'll be happy to mention some of the key ones.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, and then I also want to maybe step back a little bit and kind of give a little bit of background about myself, because
yes,
that's
I want
usually
to hear
a
all
question.
about you. I want to hear what makes you tick. You got all this, there's so much brain power there that it's just wonderful.
Well, you're very kind.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So some of the universal principles are, like, for example, the very first universal principle that I talk about. Generally speaking, they're not in any particular order. However, the very first one that I talk about in the book is so profound and so powerful and so deep that I put it first, and that is the golden rule.
Oh, golden rule.
Yeah, and sometimes people say, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you, but there's actually something even better, which is called the platinum rule, which is do not do to others what you would not want done to yourself.
Yes, I like that. That's so good, because you don't want it to happen to you. So for heaven's sakes, don't make it happen for others if you can, if you have that power,
Exactly. I mean, there may be some things that we would like other people to do to us, but that's not necessarily true for other people. So it's, do not do unto others what you would not want done to yourself. So that's the golden rule, or the platinum rule, and it's so profound, so powerful, and so deep that's the reason why I have that listed as the first one. But there's universal principles such as love and patience and
forgiveness.
The forgiveness, thank you, and persistence, and a major set of principles revolve around the notion that we are extremely powerful beings.
We are.
And so the power of the mind, you'll see a number of different universal principles that have to do with the power of the mind. So one of them is, as you think, so it is. Right,
I know.
In other words, the way you think about things has an impact on the way it actually happens.
That's so true.
That one is really powerful. There's a universal principle that says that life, can be filled with challenges.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have to always be filled with challenges, but if we go around living our life thinking that there are no challenges, then we kind of do ourselves a disservice. So recognizing
you can't
that life...
stick your head in the sand. And, it's interesting, I know you don't probably know much about what I do, but I teach affirmations, the power of affirmations. And I have that program I teach is built on 5 building blocks. The first one is forgiveness. The second one is thoughts. The third one is mind power. The fourth one is affirmations, and the fifth one is creative visualization. And, I really believe the mind is so powerful. I bet it happens to you all the time. I think about somebody, and all of a sudden they call me. And one lady, I was thinking about her when I saw a picture of her and I 30 years ago, and she picked up the phone and said, I don't think you'll remember me, and she told me who she was, and I was so glad because I didn't have her last name on the picture, and I didn't know how to find her. But using those 5 building blocks are so powerful, and like you say, the mind is so powerful. I just can't say how powerful it is. What we think about, we bring about, don't we?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that we're all learning, is that the power of our minds is actually way more, our minds are way more powerful than we can even begin to imagine. And I think it's actually scary
I think it
to some
is
people.
I think it's the greatest power that's ever been discovered, I feel,
Yeah, absolutely. And as your, multiple step processes you just outlined a few minutes ago, there's different elements of the mind, right? So there's focusing our mind, thinking about something, but then also visualizing, like you were saying.
Oh, yes. And then did I say the first one, forgiveness, thoughts, mind power, affirmations, and creative visualization is the last one, and that's what I call thinking and acting in pictures. And to being in a place where you haven't yet gone yet, putting yourself into a place and visualizing, and I believe that you believe a lot of the things that I do,
Absolutely, I certainly do. I think it's really powerful. I think one of the ways that I describe this is that we need to focus our minds on what we want.
Yes, exactly.
Not what we don't want, not focusing on problems, but focusing on what we want. And it's fascinating because, if you work in the world of business, if you work with computer systems, for example, and you're talking about designing a new computer system, you don't spend a lot of time talking about everything that you don't want the system to do. You spend your time talking about the fact that I want the screen to look like this. I want to, if I click this button, I want it to do X, Y, Z. You think about what you want.
Exactly.
And that is what I think we're getting more and more practice, focusing our minds, making sure that we're using the power of our mind, this incredibly powerful computer that we have, each one of us.
And it's very important to be specific, isn't it? Say what you want, feel what you want, and not what somebody else wants for you. Say someone said to you, one of your relatives, Brent, you should become a doctor. Well, if you don't want to be a doctor, it's not going to work to your highest good. That's how I look at it.
Absolutely, yes. And being specific is a very important part of it.
It is. It really is. So how did I now see the principles? Should we talk a little bit more about the principles so the people that you have, about maybe 3 more of them so people can jot them down?
Sure. One of them is, of course, love, right? Love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. And, there's another principle that I call endless connections. And
I love that.
Yeah, and that's basically the idea that everything is completely interconnected.
Yeah.
We may not be able to see how things are connected, but that doesn't mean that they're not connected. And I believe that everything is completely, infinitely interconnected.
It is. Yeah, I totally believe. I love that endless connection.
Yeah. So that's a really powerful.
And we know there are, love. It's sort of like to be loving, to be lovable first, and then be loving, and then be loved. There's 3 parts of it, I think. And when you have all 3 working, it really works with. We're dealing with love.
Absolutely. And, it all begins, like you just said, Anne-Marie, it all begins with yourself, right?
Yeah,
you have to
sure
love
does.
yourself first. And that's actually a perfect segue to the importance of these universal principles. Everything always begins within. So the moment that we start thinking about, like the first half of the book generally talks about how do we use these universal principles to create this bridge to a more peaceful world within ourselves. And then the second half of the book talks about how do we use these universal principles to create a better world.
Yes.
But we have to start with ourselves.
Exactly.
If
it
you
all
don't
starts
start
from
within yourself,
us, yeah?
Exactly. It all starts from within us, and if you don't start within yourself, then you kind of you're not starting from a peaceful, harmonious kind of place, and you may actually start creating more problems in the world if you don't.
That's true, and we don't need any more, do we?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, what is your favorite? I think they all are probably, but what do you have one that you favor?
Well, they're all totally different in each universal principle. There's some days that one universal principle becomes suddenly, comes into the forefront, or some of them go into the background. The 2 bookend principles, if you will, are the very first one, which we already talked about, is the golden rule or the platinum rule. And then the last one that I have, the 60th principle, is that life is a dream. And the reason why I have that as last is because, first of all, it is extremely profound that we are not living in a reality. We all think that we look around and we're on Earth and we know that we think that we understand what's going on, but there's actually a whole other reality that's happening that is much grander than the one that we're experiencing. We're experiencing like this 3D matrix reality. But the nature of the universe and the nature of reality is much more like a dream. It's like an illusion that's collectively co-created by our minds. And it's collectively co-created by our minds based on what we think and what we expect, what our belief systems are. And so to the extent that we can come together as a human family to unite around what our common vision is, that is, I believe, sometimes I refer to it as the next generation use of the power of attraction.
Yes, I really like what you said. That's so true. And some people, they don't stop to think, do they? They just keep on going, don't they, Brent? And at a rapid speed. And I think it's important to take time. And I hope you folks that are listening, I really hope that you will jot down some things that Brent is saying. And I would like to have you on again, and we can go through more things like that, because so many people need hope right now. Don't you agree?
Yes, I think we all need hope. During these times of great change and uncertainty and chaos, I think that, people really are starving for a vision of the future that is positive, and so ways to actually get there. So that's what the Rainbow Bridge is all about.
I was going to say my acronym for hope is help open people's eyes. Or you could say help open people's energy, too, couldn't you?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's wonderful. So then, is that how the Rainbow Bridge came about? Was this how you, and I just wondered if there was ever something in your background that inspired you to do this work. Did you have some experience or some dream or something that happened to you?
Well, thank you for that question, Anne-Marie. It's probably the best way to describe it is that I come from a multi-religious, multicultural family. So my mother, for example, was born and raised in Turkey, and so she was 100% Muslim, and my father was Jewish, and they raised us to be Methodist Christians.
Oh, that's quite a difference between all of them.
Yes, exactly. And as if that wasn't confusing enough, my father was also very, very interested in Zen Buddhism in particular, and in meditation, transcendental meditation.
Yes, that's wonderful. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and my dad was so interested in transcendental meditation and so involved in it that he brought me and my two sisters to learn how to do TM. And I was 12 years old at the time. So I learned how to meditate or how to do transcendental meditation when I was 12, and I've been meditating ever since. So
that's so beautiful, yeah.
It was what an incredible gift from my father.
Yes, and years ago when my daughter was young, she wasn't doing too well in school, and so I took her to a transcendental course. And, the teacher called me aside and said, "What have you done to your daughter? She seems to be so much better at work. Her work's improved, and she's just, and I told her, and she said, wow, is that ever important?" And that was quite a few years ago, imagine. And she tells me now when she needs it, she remembers her mantra, and she just uses it. So these are gifts you can use for a lifetime, aren't they?
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Yeah, it really is. It's a very, very powerful tool.
It is. Now, I just wanted to ask you, do you think this is kind of maybe not an unfair question, but do you think world peace can be achieved in our lifetime? Because so many people ask that question. What would you say?
I'd say absolutely. Absolutely, world peace can be achieved in our lifetimes. The reason why I say that is not just because I'm an optimistic person, but when I look around and see some of the things that are going on in the world, there are a lot of things that are happening that give us all, I think, great hope. So some of those things are like the Internet. If we just take the Internet, for example, it is so extremely important and so profound. The Internet is a miracle.
It is.
We generally don't think about the Internet as a miracle because it's just some technology and we're using it and it's just there every day now. We just take it for granted. But it's a miracle.
It is.
And this miracle allows us to communicate instantaneously anywhere in the world, either point-to-point communication or individual-to-group communication, just almost instantaneously at the speed of light anywhere on the planet.
I just thank it every day because that's how I get my work out, too, is sending emails and during different social medias. And as long as we use them respectful to all people, I think, and loving, I think that it's so helpful, too, isn't it? It is.
And the thing about the Internet being a miracle is that it allows us to communicate in ways we've never been able to communicate together before, ever in the history of the planet.
Exactly. I think wonderful.
You know, when we hear these stories about, I don't know, like, for example, the history of America, and you hear about horses and, you know, Paul Revere riding through the street, the Brits are coming, and, you know, like, how did they spread their messages then, right? I mean, literally, it was by horseback and people running from one house to another. We now have the capability through the internet of this massive communication, and of course, communication translates to sharing of information, sharing of knowledge, sharing of wisdom, and it ultimately allows us to come together in ways we've never come together before.
Yeah,
so
we had years ago there was such a thing as telegraph. You could telegraph people. Now that's not heard of anymore, you know. But just think, it's amazing when I think I can talk to somebody across the ocean in England or somewhere, anywhere, you know, anywhere, Caribbean, anywhere, and instantly just by clicking a button, just by clicking the click of a mouse. Imagine that, eh?
It's really, really remarkable. And the implications, I think, we're just beginning to scratch the surface of what it actually means and what we can actually do.
Yes, you're right.
So,
absolutely right. Now, I'm just trying to make sure we get, you're so interesting, I don't want to leave anything out, but I'm always watching my time frame. But what would you leave with our listeners with a key, if you take away from your book? They get your book, and I would like you, please, if you would repeat your information too, your website and everything, and where they can purchase your copy of your book.
Sure. So to find out more about the Rainbow Bridge, you can just go to www.therainbowbridge.org, or I think if you just type therainbowbridge.org, you'll get there. And it's a fairly simple website that has all of the awards that the Rainbow Bridge has earned over the years. All of the amazing endorsements are on there, and also, if you go to the front page, you'll actually see a way of downloading the 4th edition version of the book. It's an ebook, and I'm making it available during these very challenging times at no cost at all. So
that's wonderful. That's helping people that can't afford to, and some people are going through, really hard with losing loved ones too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And losing jobs and all sorts of challenges.
Yeah, it sure is. So what would you, what would you say, what would be the key? The key would be what would you say? If you were to, leave our listeners with one thing that would happen from your book, would you say one? It's kind of hard to say one thing. There's so many things, isn't there?
Yeah, if I could, if you wouldn't mind, I'd say 2 things. The first thing is, and we kind of touched on both of these already a little bit, but the first thing is that the first half of the Rainbow Bridge introduces people to the notion that there is this common ground. And these are the universal principles, right? And then how do we use these universal principles to create this bridge to a bridge between our head and our heart, a bridge between ourselves and our future selves? There's different ways of looking at it. But it's basically, how do we use this concept of the Rainbow Bridge and these universal principles to create a more peaceful world within ourselves, within our own heart and mind and soul? Because that's what everyone wants, is just to have a peaceful, happy life, right? Yeah. And that's where it all starts. So if anyone has felt like their life is in a lot of tumult and very stressful, and maybe a lot of uncertainty going on, then the Rainbow Bridge and these universal principles, I think, can be very inspiring. So that's the first part. And again, not to really emphasize it too much, but because it is so important, the primary application of these universal principles always starts within. And so finding a ways to use them in our own individual personal lives, first and foremost, is really important.
It sure is.
And then the rest of the book talks about how do we use these universal principles to create a bridge to a better world. And I do have a 14-point roadmap, or framework, really is probably a better way of saying it. It's a 14-point framework for world peace. And there are a number of concepts in here in the 14 different points, but if I could, just to touch upon some of the really key ones.
Yes, please do, Brent. That's wonderful.
Okay, so there is a concept that's super important for everyone to understand, because sometimes, I don't know how many conversations I've been in where people they seem to be surprised that there are so many problems in the world, and they don't understand why. Why are there all these terrible crises happening constantly? Well, there is a way to understand this where the problems that we're all experiencing completely make sense that we have them. And that is the following. So the world that we live in today is a completely interconnected system of systems, right? Our financial systems are all completely interconnected. Our communication systems are all completely connected all over the world. Everything is we're completely interdependent upon one another. And it's like this giant computer system, and yet the world does not have a smoothly functioning global operating system. Now, what is an operating system? An operating system is, for example, if you have a Windows machine, then Windows is the operating system. If you have a Macintosh, then it has a Macintosh operating system, or there's a Linux operating system, or there's a Mac OS on the iPhones or Android. It's the operating system that operates at the highest level on that device to ensure the equitable distribution of resources of that computer. And so an operating system is very important. So if you have a PC, for example, and you're using, a web browser, and maybe you've launched the web browser, but you also have an Excel spreadsheet, and maybe you have some other application that's crunching numbers, So the operating system makes sure that no single program will start sucking up all the CPU power and all the memory, for example. Right? So an operating system in a computer is very, very important. Otherwise, any program could come along and start using up all the CPU power, all the memory, all the hard drive capacity, all of the peripherals, and so the operating system makes sure that all of the resources are shared appropriately. So the world, as I said, does not have a smoothly functioning global operating system. And because we don't have a smoothly functioning global operating system, then any program, if you will, can come along and start sucking up the planetary resources. Programs like big companies, programs like countries, multinational corporations, without having a smoothly functioning global operating system, then of course we're going to have problems. Of course we're going to have a massive problem with the distribution of resources in the world. And it's just one tiny piece of data to explain what I'm talking about here in terms of these problems is that, I'm painfully aware that about half the people in the world struggle to survive on less than $2 a day.
Oh, my goodness.
Even if you take in consideration barter and currency differences and trade agreements and things like that, if half the people in the world are struggling to survive on less than $2 a day, then obviously we have enormous, massive problems.
Yes,
but when you recognize we don't have a global operating system, then it completely makes sense that we have all these problems. And so that's something that can inspire us. We can then say, okay, well, we don't have this global operating system. I'm not saying it's easy to create a global operating system, but I'm saying that we can be led by a vision that says this is what we want. We want a smoothly functioning global operating system.
So
we put it in our mind's eye. We use the power of our mind. We use the power of visualization. And that's one of the greatest tasks of our time, I believe, is to help create literally a new operating system for the world.
Well, can we create an operating system for ourselves?
Well, the universal principles, I believe, create this kind of mini operating system way of, or almost like a framework that you can embed within your own mind. And that actually is a really powerful, I think I'd probably have to think about it a little longer to call it an operating system, but it's certainly a very powerful framework that we can kind of download into our minds with great effect. And that's really, again, goes to the first half of the book, is using these universal principles in our own hearts and minds.
Yes, that's so important. And folks, you're listening to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show, and I've been doing this for 15 years, and I'm so delighted to have my special guest, Brent Hunter, on, and he is a very knowledgeable man, and I am so interested. I'm not going to get everything in this one show, so I'm going to ask him if he can come back and we can finish it later, or we'll see how far we get. Anyway, we're going to go for a short break, and we'll be right back after the short break with more with my special speaker, Brent, and we'll talk later.
When was the last time you read a book that has created a profound impact on your life? This book is touching deep into the hearts of readers worldwide and empowering people with new hope to conquer over a life of despair, loneliness, and sadness. This book is called Affirmations Your Passport to Happiness by Dr. Anne Marie Evers. In this book, you'll learn the power of affirmations, creating visualization, goal setting, positive thinking, self-esteem, learn how to attract the perfect, lasting, successful career, relationship, and have optimal health. To order your copy, log on to www.affirmations-doctor.com or email AnneMarieEvers@shore.ca and get your passport to happiness. Affirmations, Your Passport to Happiness, the book that's giving people positive control over their lives once again.
Welcome back to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show, where dreams really can and do come true. And my special guest today is Brent, and we are talking about some very important issues. Now, where did we leave off, Brent? We were talking about the system, operating system.
Yes. We were talking about the global operating system. And so I think this is a really important concept for people to think about and to get in their mind and kind of recognize that wow, of course we have all these problems, and we're going to continue to have these problems until we have some kind of smoothly functioning global operating system. So there's another concept that is tied in. A lot of these concepts are all, of course, interconnected, but another concept that fits in perfectly with the notion of the need for a global operating system is the importance of viewing ourselves, every single one of us, not just as, I'm an Angelino, I live in the city of angels in Los Angeles, or I'm a Californian, or I'm an American. But just like we can have multiple identities, starting with a local view of ourselves and how we belong in our local community, we can also continue expanding that out. And I think what's really important is that everyone view themselves as a world citizen, and actually first and foremost as a world citizen. Because
I like that, yes.
Yeah, it's really important, because when we view ourselves as world citizens, then we realize that all of the artificial boundaries, all of the nation state boundaries and the barriers and everything, the way everything works, is a way of separating ourselves. And so a way of uniting is to recognize, look, we're all members of the human family. We're all in this together. We will have, at some point, it's only a question of time, we will have a smoothly functioning global operating system, and we're all world citizens. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not, again, like the example for me, it doesn't mean that I'm not an Angelino here in Los Angeles. It doesn't mean I'm also not a Californian. It doesn't mean I'm not an American. It means all of those things, but it depends on, how we focus our mind. And I think it's just super important to view ourselves as being world citizens.
Yeah.
Because it's at that point that we can then begin to act together in unity at the global level, which is so very needed.
Yes, that there is hope then. It's not just spiraling down. We have ways to help it. Now, who could get busy and get that going and get that started? Would it be our politicians? Would it be our regular people? Or who would it be?
I think it's regular people, everyday people, coming together, sitting at their dining room tables or at their kitchen tables, or having picnics or wherever we are, right? It's the average everyday person. When we come together, we can achieve miracles. When we come together in unity, we can accomplish anything. And I think what's really important is just for us to kind of keep some of these ideas in our minds, the need for a global operating system, the importance of thinking of ourselves as world citizens. And then there's another concept that's also so important, Anne-Marie, that I want to share now.
Yes.
And that is, you remember playing the game Monopoly?
Oh, I sure do.
Yeah. So it's actually one of my favorite games. We used to play it all the time when I was a child.
Yeah.
And, there comes a time when you're playing that game that somebody starts getting all the houses in the hotels.
Yeah, they sure do. It might not be you.
Exactly. It may not be you, but whoever it is that's getting the houses in the hotels, they're getting richer and richer and richer. And, boy, they're having a great time, Like every time somebody lands on their properties, they get even more money. And then the people that land on there, they get even less money. And, there comes a point in this game of Monopoly where it's clear that nobody else is going to win. It's clear that person that has all the houses and hotels, there's no way anybody can possibly catch up to them. So at that point, when I was a child, we would just flip the game board up. You'd just toss it, and, everything would go flying everywhere, and we'd say, okay, that's it. Let's start a new game.
Start a new game, yeah.
And then we would start a new game. But this metaphor, I'm using this example of the game of Monopoly as a metaphor because I believe it's actually a very accurate metaphor for what's going on in the world today.
Yeah.
We have this global system. Yeah, we're all using different currencies in our different countries, but we are living in this time when the vast majority of people, as I've already mentioned, half the people in the world are struggling to survive on less than $2 a day. Those people are not very happy at all, right?
No,
and so what needs to happen is we need to have a reset. And just like starting a new game, a new Monopoly game, where everything is reset, the bank accounts, the debts, everything. And what's really super interesting is there's this concept that happens throughout history called a jubilee. And a jubilee is when people's debts are forgiven, when financial obligations are let go and forgiven, where people are let out of prison. Everything starts new. Everything completely gets refreshed in a jubilee.
Oh.
And that is what we need. We need to have a reset. How could we possibly make major changes in the world when you have half the people in the world struggling to survive on less than $2 a day? I mean, clearly the entire financial system needs to be completely redone, just like any computer system that's completely outdated and filled with bugs and problems. It ultimately needs to either be rebuilt or replaced. And so, this notion of a jubilee, a carefully planned jubilee, is really important. Now, I will say that a number of years ago, when I wrote that part of the book about the jubilee, I thought to myself, well, I don't know how does it work when you let people out of prison? I mean, it seems like that'd be kind of dangerous to to let people out of prison. Well, guess what? During the coronavirus pandemic, thousands upon thousands of prisoners have been released out of prisons here in the U.S.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and it is a sign of great compassion in the system, where prisoners were released to spend the rest of their time, or some of the time anyway, at home confinement or however else they do it.
Yeah.
So there is a way to make a carefully planned jubilee happen in a way that meets that creates a win-win-win situation for the people of the world. And so this concept that we need a reset is very, very important. And this notion of a jubilee fits in perfectly as a way to make this global reset happen.
Well, that is a part of it, reset, right? Isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. It's really, it's interesting to wrap your mind around some things what you're bringing up is some things that maybe some of us haven't really studied or heard about, and it's very interesting. That's why I think it's so important to share with others our information, don't you?
Absolutely, exactly. And this is why, when I sat down to write the Rainbow Bridge a number of years ago, it was, this information, this knowledge that was kind of downloaded into my brain, if you will. This is not my information. It's not my knowledge. It's not me. I didn't do it. I mean, I'm just this kind of person or this vessel or this channel or however you want to say it, that I've received this information and that my responsibility is to share it. Yeah. And so that's what the Rainbow Bridge has been all about for more than 20 years now, is sharing with as many people as I possibly can the concept that there is a common ground in the world's major wisdom traditions. It's all based on love and respect and dignity. And there is a way to create a better world. There is a very specific, concrete way to create this bridge to a better world. And by the way, that's another thing I want to mention. When you use the bridge concept, like if you're building a bridge from one side of a river to another side of a river, then it's a journey, right? You have to build part of the bridge. You have to build, depending on what kind of bridge you're building, whether it's a suspension bridge or some other kind of bridge that has supports from the bottom. But it's a process, right? And you have to say, well, we're going to be connecting this side and this side. Well, it's the same thing with creating a better world, creating a bridge to a better world. It's a journey. And yes, there's a destination, but what's most important is to get started on this journey. And we don't need to know all the answers. Very often we are not given all the answers in our personal lives and in our collective lives, but we're given exactly what we need to know. And so there are two quotations which to me are so brilliant, and I love these, and they're so inspiring to me. One of them is Martin Luther King. He said that you don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step.
I love that. Yes, that is.
Just take the first step. Isn't that powerful?
It is so powerful. First step is where it all begins, isn't it?
Exactly. It's just taking the first step. And then Thomas Carlyle is another inspiring person, and he said, go as far as you can see, and from there you will see further.
Isn't that interesting?
And I love that too. It's just so simple, right?
Yeah, it is. Very
it's true. We know this is true, right? If you're I don't know, you're looking down the road a mile away, well, there's certain things you can't see very well a mile away. But if you walk a mile and then you're there, then you can see all those things better.
Exactly.
And from there you can see more than you could before, right? So it's the same thing. I think we have to be comfortable not having all the answers.
Yes.
And this is where faith comes in.
And the excitement of learning new things too. Faith and excitement, I think, goes together too. You know what I mean?
I do. Yes, exactly. Excitement. I mean, it can be fun. It's real easy to get sad and in a state of fear, and there's a lot of darkness in the world now. At the same time, there's also a lot of light, because wherever there's a great amount of darkness, there's also a great amount of light, and vice versa. But we can have fun doing it.
And I think we should look forward to that. And you know that we're almost up. I can't believe how this hour has just flown by like 2 minutes.
I know.
But I'm sort of we're just about ready to complete the program. But I wanted to say, I think I didn't get about 5 more questions answered. So I think what we need to do is schedule you. I'll find out my gal that does the scheduling when we can get another appointment. And I would love to have you come on, and we can sort of pick it up from there. In the meantime, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, if they just go to therainbowbridge.org, my contact information is there. It's my email address is either brent@therainbowbridge.org, or you can just send me an email at brent@brenthunter.tv, like television.
Yes, wonderful.
But the easiest thing is just to go to the rainbowbridge.org website.
And it's so easy to remember, too. Now, I just want to ask you, what would you leave in the last, say, 5 minutes? What would you leave with the folks from today that we can leave with them till next time you're on?
Well, I think what comes to my mind is in a time when there can seem to be lots of uncertainty and a lot of stress and a lot of fear and a lot of upheaval, just to remember that miracles do happen. And, Einstein actually said it, I think he said it in a really great way. He said, you can either live by thinking that miracles don't exist or that they exist in every single second of every day, right?
I love the last part, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really a much more accurate, accurate way of seeing the world. And so each one of us has an opportunity to make a difference, to make a big difference. It all begins within the heart and mind of each one of us, and that is what we do have control over.
Yes.
We may not feel like we have total control, but we can all close our eyes, go within, and meditate and ponder who we are, what's important to us, what we stand for, what we value in the world, what we want to see in the world. And from there, create a peaceful kind of energetic field in which lots of positive change can take place.
We can develop a creative visualization with anything we want to and just get it to go, and the relationship comes up, doesn't it? That's what I feel.
Yes.
You get it, and it happens. And so I really would love you all to check out his book. And you've been a very, very interesting guest. I really enjoyed every minute. And I thank Dia for making it possible that you're here. And it's nice to meet you. And I will definitely look forward to having you on again. And we can but we can get through the questions I have, because I know subjects that you have that you're working on, there really is no real finish, is there? It goes on and on to more and greater things, doesn't it?
It does. But I would welcome being here again and continuing to explore these important topics.
I would love to have you come, and please visit his website. And by the way, folks, if you want to find out, I have been having questions about my affirmation life tools. I just want to mention, please go to one of my websites is AnneMarieEvers.com, and it's just my name, AnneMarieEvers, Evers they call it, some people, Evers.com. And then I have another one called SelfImprovementTalkRadio.com, and that one has a lot of information on them, so you can check that out too. And a lot of what I say and what I believe in and what I think is true is what you've been saying. And it's amazing how I get so excited when you meet someone that believes the way you do. It just seems to be like it's just confirming the things that I say to people, in my groups and over the shows and everything I do. And I know that you love sharing your information too as much as you can, and people love to hear it because it's something they can use. You know what I mean? And
yes.
When I know fear, false evidence appearing real, they say, my acronym for fear is find enlightening answers readily. And, when I do that, when I go into fear, I find answers readily. I go and think, well, I'm thankful for my blessings. And then I feel like I'm not so much in fear anymore. Have you ever experienced that as well?
Actually, I've never heard that. I've heard the false evidence appearing real, but I like your
I made that up myself
interpretation.
Because that's what I do. When I go into fear, I find enlightening answers readily. So I find things to do that are interesting and enlightening and helpful. And
love it.
I hope the folks will take that and use it too, because I think we're born to help everyone else, and I love it that you think of it being a world citizen. It's nice to feel what country are you citizen of the world? I like that.
Mm-hmm.
It puts us all together, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It sure does.
And so I want to thank you for again, and we'll be on again. And I just want to say, folks, affirmations, when properly done, always work. And the one book that I want you to read is The Rainbow Bridge, and just read it. Don't try to read it all in one night or so. Read it and think about it, I think. Don't you suggest that's the best way to do?
Yeah, there's a lot of information, very profound information in the Rainbow Bridge. I think even if a person could read that fast, it is definitely the kind of content that seeps in and sinks in, and you sleep on it, and you have different ways of appreciating the content over time.
That's true. And what we focus on, we become, and I believe we focus on the words, and then they take root in our subconscious mind. They grow and become reality for us, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Yep. So with that, I want to say have a great, wherever it is, afternoon or evening, and I look forward to having you as a guest on again, and we'll go into some more questions, and I'm sure people will have some questions they'd like to ask, so I'm looking forward to that, and I just want to thank you for taking your time. I know how busy you are, out of your busy time, and to be with us on the air today. And I want to thank all the listeners for listening, and I wish you all happiness. And affirmations, when properly done, always work, folks. They don't work when they're not properly done. They have to be specific. And we'll be back on the air with Brent Hunter, so watch for that, and I'll be advertising it too on Facebook. And thank you so much, and thank you, and God bless.
Well, if you have a problem and you don't know where to go, just dial up the internet and listen to the show. Tune in to Dr. Evers, she'll lift your spirits high. Her affirmations lead you from the darkness to the light. Say thank you, thank you, thank you. Believe with all your soul. When properly done, they always work, you know. Oh, just say an affirmation. Love, health, and abundance beginning to show. Oh, just say an affirmation. Show your gratitude and the blessings will flow. Oh, just say an affirmation. Love, health, and abundance beginning to show. Oh, just say an affirmation. Show your gratitude and the blessings will flow.